but it's frustrating. My program director once got mad at me because a kid was sleeping in my lecture and I threw a piece of paper at him. And she said, you can't do that. I go, why? She said, well, he's sleeping. I go, he shouldn't be sleeping. So I promise if any of you guys fall asleep, I won't throw paper at you. But it did lead to a conversation that my program director, Carl Evans, goes, are you okay? And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, it seems like you're frustrated. I was, and I was split all over the place. And like Dr. Damon says, when you do this, you give up a lot of time. You give up a lot of time to do it. You give a lot of time to create it. And you have to have a really good why on how you do it. I have been blessed to have an amazing practice. We even have an education company that we've started about a year and a half ago. And this is where all this information is coming from. So there's a little bit of a perspective though. I really feel that I've gotten the gift in the last 7 years to work alongside my mentors, people like Dr. Damon, product development and engineers like Steve Ward and all the people at Ormco. They've truly taught me how to use this technology, okay? But that teaching has to come with something else. The teaching comes with the fact it's a perfect storm that I'm also blessed with a really busy practice. We treat anywhere between 600 to 800 cases a year. It's kind of big for the United States and probably big globally. We got 2 practices. For a long time it was just me. Now I've got a couple docs that work with me. But because of that and because of the team that I have, it creates such beautiful photographs. It gives me an opportunity to test systems and analyze them. Because if all I had was the platform of knowledge, but I didn't have the platform of experience, then a lot of this would be theoretical. I'd be showing you a lot of maybe corporate-driven slides, things that kind of look maybe a little bit overproduced. But by having the luxury of and the blessing of having a big practice, I was able to take the things that I was learning, run them through my practice, because I'm a business person too. I want to make sure that they're working, and then refine them, okay? And lastly, I've also been given the opportunity by Ormco to share this information, okay? So I have mentors teaching me. I have a practice which helps me to create the content. And then I have a platform of a company that supports me in that telling of the story. So in the last, maybe 6 years, I've been fortunate enough to give over 100 individually different Damon Ultima lectures over 13 different countries. And that's all because of the support and commitment that Ormco is going to provide their customers and you guys to help spread the word. Because I firmly believe that Ormco is one of the companies that believes and understands that education is the pathway to selling product. Now, I'm not here to sell product and I'm not here to sell anything. I'm here to say what works in my practice. But if I do it under a transparent guideline, I do it with passion and I do it with believability. Okay, they say a picture says more than 1,000 words. So by having great photographs, telling a story, using the teachings of not only my mentors, but my friends and people that help guide the narrative when I don't know what I'm doing. And one of the best things you can say is, I don't know. And then go find someone who does. And I guarantee you, I've called Steve Ward hundreds of times saying, I can't figure this out. Can you just please explain it to me? And he was the most patient person I could ever imagine. He would say, okay, look, and he would try it different ways. And it's weird to think that an orthodontist doesn't understand how a bracket works. But you guys are going to find quite quickly that very few orthodontists know how the things that we use work. We just know how to get them to work, right? Honk the horn, turn on the windshield wipers, and kick the door. That's how we get the car to turn left, right? And it's not just turning the steering wheel. Now we have a steering wheel to turn. So it's very important for me to kind of lay this out because you guys are a very unique audience for me in the fact that this is going to be you, right? And it's very important to figure out how to convey that message. So as we go through this, we'll kind of talk a little bit about it. Some of you guys that have seen me speak have seen this kind of bit. And I kind of talk about, in the United States, I'm tasked at being 2 different people. Somebody who has to run a successful business. Because if I don't run a successful business, I can't be here, all right? Because if my business isn't successful, then I can't afford my life, and I have to go find some other way to supplement my income. The only way that I can take time to do something else is to make sure that my business is running well. So we do that by making sure that we analyze all business metrics to make sure that we're performing at our peak. And that person is always dressed like this, kind of like this too, right? I don't really wear a sport coat unless I'm teaching, but this is the nicely dressed version of me. This is the one that makes business decisions, looks at overhead, has to deal with HR concerns and taxes and And am I willing to invest in technology, right? Because it's expensive, and you're going to hear that. And the tools that we play with that are the most innovative, by definition, are probably going to have the highest value, but may have the highest price, okay? Because they know what they have. They put tons of time into it, and they know the value that it turns into. So this person has to decide, is there value in this innovative technology? Now, I want you to show, for our friends from Jakarta, this was taken at the Park Hyatt in Jakarta, the backyard. One of the most beautiful hotel I've ever been in. It's insane. It was really nice. Anyway, I was trying to sneak in photos from places that I get to go to. So let me also introduce you to somebody who looks at pure clinical excellence. Okay, and that's the same person, it's me. Okay, but I'm in Scrubs now. Now here's a news flash. The person who deals with clinical excellence and the person who deals with business excellence, they don't like each other. Okay, it's really one of the reasons why hospital administrators don't typically hire physicians on their boards. Okay, they will for consultants, but not for business metrics, right? And it really frustrates the physicians. My brother's a physician, and he's gone from different hospital groups, and he's like, oh, I can't believe they always hire these people they got their MBA and they don't have any experience as a physician. I'm like, well, because they have to run a successful business, and sometimes they interfere. So the problem with having somebody who has to do both, and everybody does, it doesn't matter what environment you work in, right? You have to still balance the business side and the clinical side at some level. The problem is when you make a great clinical decision, sometimes it affects your business counterpart, and sometimes when you make a great business decision, it really irritates the clinical person. So what ends up happening is, even though both these guys are smiling, you get a lot of these feelings that are in your psyche. You can get annoyed, you can feel unprofessional. Let's say you're telling your patients that I use the best technology, but deep down, maybe you know that you don't, because it's really hard to switch systems. You don't have the energy and the time, and you're doing just okay with the system you're using. And this will be your audience. Your audience will find 1,000 reasons not to change, okay? And it's not your job to tell them they're a bad person for doing that. It's your job to get them to know that you understand them. Okay, so whenever I speak, I'm speaking from the position of the audience. I'm imagining I'm in the audience, and I'm trying to find a way to connect with myself, right? So any orthodontist, if you say at the end of the day, do you feel disappointed, or do you feel angry or impatient and helpless because something happened throughout your day you couldn't control? They're all going to say yes. And then guess what we do? We go home, and we're not our best selves. We're tired, we're short. Maybe I'm not the best father, maybe not the best husband. I don't even want to talk sometimes when I get home, right? So now I'm identifying and I'm creating a connection with my audience because they realize that I'm in the same fight they are. So is it possible to take innovative technologies and leverage them to unlock performance so that we can maybe satisfy both ends of the spectrum? The clinical, Dr. Michael Bịthnell, and then the business, Michael Bịthnell with no business credentials after that. I'll have my MBA, so I can't say that. I wish I did, and I could really punch it. But business and clinical. So let's just find out. I'm not here to tell you anything. I'm here to maybe tell a story, and hopefully we can all come to some conclusion. But first, there's something really interesting, and I just want to kind of summarize what we saw today. If we go all back to the beginning, we know what we do, we know how we do it, but we really just don't ask why we do it. And Simon Sinek is a great author that wrote this really good book called Start With Why. And Start With Why, basically, this is this. It's a little bullseye. Again, most people know what we do. We straighten teeth. How we do it, we can all figure that out. But the question is why do we do what we do? And Simon Sinek has this really cool bullseye where most companies go from the outside in, but the really good companies figure this out first and then move out. And by the time they get out here, it doesn't even matter what they do. If I took my team in my office and I decided to build a widget, my team would be awesome to build a widget because they all have passion for the process. They know what their why is. And as long as we have purpose behind what we do, then they can do whatever. They just happen to be an orthodontic team, and I happen to be an orthodontist, right? So if we look at, why are we all here together in this room? There's a pretty fundamental and obvious reason. It's because of Dr. Damon, right? Dr. Damon has somehow done things in his life that has all put us here together. Without Dr. Damon, it'd be a very random and high probability that we would all be in this room together talking about something that's orthodontically related, right? So that's kind of weird when you think like that, but it's awesome. We look at Dr. Damon. Dr. Damon, I have a couple quotes from him that I want to highlight from what he said today. And he just said when he started his practice, he tried really hard to use lighter forces, but he was always treating the original arch form because that's what we were taught to do. I still had this argument with somebody 2 days ago about treating the natural arch form, and this orthodontist who teaches at 2 Ivy League schools right now and is a highly regarded lecturer still wasn't convinced the natural arch form was something that is our destination. And, it is what it is, right? But Dr. Damon knew this, right? Dr. Damon also said that when he evaluated all of his cases, he saw that they were breaking down. Like, that's a perspective that somebody doesn't have. I was talking to Vaz when I was in Bangkok a couple weeks ago. I've been traveling a lot, so sorry. But we were part of an earthquake, so for all us earthquake survivors, we got there. I'd never been in an earthquake before, and my wife, I started filming the earthquake, and my wife said, never let anyone see that. You sound like a sociopath. Because I was like, oh, this is cool, we're in an earthquake. And then I'm like, Grace, you okay? You scared? And she's kind of, I'm like, you need a hug. And like, my wife goes, were you at all worried? I'm like, no. But I was when I realized what was happening. It's because I'd never been in one before. She goes, don't share that. But then Dane did, so it's awesome. I did. It sounded kind of weird. But anyway, when I was talking to Vaz, we were talking for some reason about the U.S. and how there's this whole population of people that don't believe in vaccines. And I don't really care whether you do or you don't. But Vaz is like, because when I grew up in India, he goes, it was very common to see a child that was suffering from polio. He's like, so when you see the ramifications of this disease, you'll stand in line. You'll pay money for this magic medicine that gives you the chance to prevent the disease. But the problem is, in the United States, polio has been eradicated. So our generation has never seen it. They don't look in books. It's not in the internet. They're all worried about today. So the people that are like, no, I don't want the vaccine, it's because they don't have any experience with the ramifications of the bad outcomes. Dr. Damon, looking at his cases 20 years later, wants to puke sometimes and cry because you saw him get emotional with that case. It was a beautifully treated case. And the sad part is, it probably would have passed the ABO. Well, no, I'm a member of the ABO. It's great. But like that case would have passed the American Board of Orthodontics as a submitted case for a properly treated case, even today. Okay? But he's literally shedding a tear because he knows what he did, but he didn't know what he was doing at the time. So my analogy with that is, by looking back at his cases, Dr. Damon is relentless at making things better. And what you'll find when you start lecturing is you have to look back at your cases. You have to create outcomes, and you also have to create systems that allow you to track your cases in the future. I never would have set up systems to take 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, and 10-year retention records if it wasn't for teaching. And there's no reason to. Like, I treated them, I'm good. Like, I just want to go back to my life. But because I want to know if my treatments are successful, we're going to do that, right? Another quote that he said is, this is what inspired him to create a new bracket system, and thankfully he did. So thank you, Dr. Damon. Now, what are some highlight slides? His highlight slides were really, really simple. And one of the things that's actually pretty amazing is when you start to teach and you're using a bracket system that has a name on it, like Dr. Damon, there might be some open arms, welcoming, like, oh, I love that you're teaching this technology. But there also can be some closed off arms and resentment because maybe there's a stigma attached to a story that happened 20, 30, 10 years ago. It doesn't even matter. And there are people that have that. Now, interestingly enough, I was asked to do this really cool lecture about patient health for a lifetime. And I got to dig through like 400 of Dr. Damon's slides. And it wasn't until I went through all 400 slides methodically to understand how simple his thinking was. He looked at things like this and he said, he treated these twins and just realized that they weren't stable. He realized that what was happening to the lower bicuspids, they were tipped in and everything was just not functional, even though he knew it needed to be better because he was waxing up prosthodontic posterior arches. He saw that from Krauss that truly, and this makes sense. If you talk to people, you say, doesn't it just make sense that if you have vertical forces through a bicuspid, the PDL is evenly stressed? Why would you want to put pressure in one area so that you can get areas of pressure causing recession and bone apposition and root resorption? talked about curve of speed. Bone biology, no one's really ever talked about this. This was after he went through the whole idea with the OSIM, right? And that he saw, even though Dr. Damon thought he could bend wire better than anybody else, he was mortified with how much force he was putting on teeth. Just shocked. So was everyone else. No one else did anything about it. Dr. Damon did. So Dr. Damon said something nice. I missed it, but he said something about a brilliant person. He was referring to me. I don't know why, but these were my wires. I was complaining, and well before I had a stage, well before I had a platform, well before I knew Steve, well before I even knew Dr. Damon on a call basis, I was a practitioner using the Damon system, and I was frustrated that I had to do this on every single case, and all my wires look all the same. Now, I had treated beautiful cases, but why was I working so hard? So I got all mad. I debonded 30 cases. I taped the wires to a piece of paper and sent them to the engineers for a phone call that wasn't even good. A couple years later, somehow I hooked up with Steve, and he showed me the wires. I'm like, where'd you get those? He's like, they ended up at my desk and they never left. And it was actually interesting because it's been a very powerful tool to get everyone to understand that when I show you these wires, and if you're a DQ or DQ2 user, you've seen this in your practice, right? Because everyone has, just no one talks about it. So when I went through this, I highlighted the Damon philosophy, the PSL tenets. There's three. There's literally three. The first one, always use biological treatment forces. Okay, is that so strong? Number two, treat to the natural arch form. There's a million reasons why we do, and we'll show a couple of those. And if you ever need slides on this, I have some really good ones. 3, obtain a superb functional inclusion. So for all the people that start to give you pushback on being a, quote, Damon provider, say, look, PSL tenets are keep forces light, treat to a beautiful arch form that gives you airway management and airway awareness, and room for the tongue, and treat to a superb occlusion. There's nothing wrong with that. There's not one person that can argue against those three tenets, right? It's all the other noise that wasn't created by Dr. Damon. It was other people that started saying certain things. Don't do this, don't do that. Dr. Damon, if you've ever listened to him speak, he's never once said, don't do this. He just says, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm doing, and I hope you find it inspirational, which is a really good message. The minute you tell somebody that they're doing something wrong, they just shut off. Another fun thing when you guys start presenting is you will offend everybody. You'll put a picture of puppies up, and then somebody will be like, oh, I don't like puppies. Where's the cats? So I did a Google search on the least, what's the least impactful and least offensive image on the planet. They said bubbles. So I make all my own slides. So I just Google some bubbles, and I just put bubbles behind like pictures because people apparently like them. So it's kind of fun. I don't know. We live in an area of innovation, right? So once your why is determined, the how becomes the area of innovation that's created by the need. There has to be a need for these companies to build something, okay? Because they have to make money. And thankfully, and I'm very grateful for companies like Ormco. They're very innovative. I don't know if you guys know what Ormco stands for. It's Orthodontic Research and Manufacturing Company. It's a nice little tidbit because it shows that their commitment to innovation is in their DNA. It's built in their name. And I don't know, I've seen a lot of companies, not a lot of companies are doing what Ormco's doing. They're investing in our specialty, right? Our specialty is orthodontics. And to have a partner like Ormco to do that is awesome. So it's really easy to stand up front and speak with a company like Ormco. Not necessarily for, they give us some money to do this, but it's with a company. They're our partners. All right, so we got to see, the how. The how is answered by people like Steve, right? Steve has been awesome. I take a couple pictures of Steve along the way, but most of the time he's stuck here in his office in Canada. If you ever call Steve or you get on a Zoom call with him, this is what you'll see. No, this is what you'll see. This is what you see when he gets all polished up. This is what you see when he's at home, but it's the same Steve, I promise you. Okay, you might have a little tobacco in there, that's different. But this is Steve too, right? This is Steve making connections with his customers, making lifelong friends. I know people, when I say Steve, like, oh my God, I love that guy, right? I can't say that about a lot of people, right? My circle of friends is pretty small, but Steve's one of them. And it's not because I work for him or with him or alongside him. It's because he's a really great guy and he cares about ortho, and our our passions are aligned. He just happens to know a lot about how things are made, and he's very good at teaching. So make sure that when you run into a problem, somebody asks you a question you can't answer, and it's about maybe something in the system. If you can't find the answer, just shoot Steve an email. He's more than welcome to help. And we saw he used to do this thing, look under that. That was it. So we had Dr. Dame talking about why. We got Steve talking about how. Guess what? There's only one left. I'm the what. I'm like, what are we gonna do? And I'm an orthodontist. So today I'm gonna show you how to use the Damon Ultimate System, at least in the way that I've used it. So, I did this one lecture once about customer service, and because customer service is huge in the United States, right? And everyone's like, oh, I got 4-star customer service. I have 5-star customer service. I have the ultimate customer service. Well, at the end of the day, there's a huge push right now that customer service has nothing to do with the feel. It's about the outcome, okay? Which means that Forbes did this. They went through a couple different industries, and what they found is that the outcome as a service model is what actually rapidly innovates so that companies can deliver their services faster with greater efficiency. Sorry. They also want to make sure that they eliminate wastes of time, right? So if you can shorten up the outcome and eliminate the time gap between the start to the outcome, then that is highly valuable. So if Ormco can figure out a way to save time for their customers, that's innovation, okay? And that's the outcome. There's a really great saying. People don't want to buy a 1/4-inch drill. They just want a 1/4-inch hole. Okay, what that means is you wouldn't get in your car and drive to in our country, it's like Home Depot. I don't know what you guys have, like, in different countries, but it's like the store where you buy building supplies. You wouldn't drive there, try to find it, pay for it, bring it home, and get one little drill that you'll use probably once or twice to get a hole if you already had the hole. So you don't want the drill, which means you don't want the customer service that goes along with the store. You don't want that because most of the time it leads to a negative experience. You just want the hole very quickly. So simply put, the outcome is the service. And what I'm trying to get at is what I have found to be the most effective message is not product-centered. I don't talk about how the Damon Ultimate System is what's going to make your practice great. I don't talk about how Ormco is going to make your practice great or how my practice is going to make your treatment great. We also don't talk about the patient itself. And we're not looking at like massage chairs and popcorn machines and all this stuff that's a distraction. What we're trying to do is we're centering our outcome around customer needs. So the outcome is truly what you're delivering. If you can get this, if you can look and you can say, okay, if we're going to uncover the innovations that allow us to get to our outcome faster or the destination, okay? And we can also have strategies that get us there. So the destination is the outcome. And the coolest part about this is all of us are going to look at these next few slides, and this is basically a beautiful picture of a smile that has an outcome of something that was delivered by Damon Ultima, right? So if you can consistently get natural, beautiful, patient-centered smiles. I'm not stamping out the same smile for every patient. I'm giving each patient their own individual natural smile. So if you can do this, and you can do this pretty consistently, where you can deliver a smile that fits her face. Her smile may not fit someone else's face, but each one of these, when I look at their pre-treatment photographs, they look exactly the same. They just have a nice, beautiful, natural smile. They're not overly wide. They're not constricted. They don't look all the same. Everyone has different individual anatomy. They have different tongues, different airway, different musculature, different genetics. So all of these smiles have a characteristic, unique look, but they also, in my mind, have this really cool, refined look. And we'll get into that. And the reason why is because you have to also build a functional inclusion, right? So does the destination not only deliver beauty, but does it deliver function? And can it do it easily? That's the whole point. So when you look at these same cases, and these are all, again, Damon Ultima smiles that have never had a bend in the arch wire, can we deliver these consistent results? That the fun thing by the end of this presentation, what you're going to find is that there's a lot of consistency in these results. And the consistency is we are at -3 plus 3 and plus 7, -2 plus 3 plus 7. If you look at all these, all the third order, all the second order, all the first order are pretty dialed in. That's why it looks so uniform. And that's why each case looks very, very, very similar. But when we can balance the facial aesthetics and we can balance the occlusion, and we can do it without bending, and what I'll show you is we can do it a little bit more efficiently, because the value prop that Ormco gives us is to save time by engineering. What's left to do? Well, you could spend some of your time dialing in things like microaesthetics. You can look at soft tissues. You can look at interproximal contacts. Now, everyone says, well, I used to do that anyway, but I mean, let's be real. If you've got a patient who's been in treatment for 2.5 years and their gums are swollen and they're barely getting across the finish line, are you going to spend another 2 appointments taking care of contact points and making sure everything's perfect? No, you want them out of braces. At least I did. I looked at that patient saying, it's better for this patient to get out of braces and get retainers than it is to spend another 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks, probably with something that's going to go wrong, bracket's going to break, and things are going to move. So I would do that. But now that I'm finishing most of my mechanics very early on, I have plenty of time to look at the microaesthetics. So does our destination collectively, as a good sample of our patients, are we going to focus on these things? And this is where I find that I've spent the last 10 years. Okay, I mean, I think that I was doing a pretty good job with occlusion, and I've luckily been doing Damon for like 20 years. So my passive self-ligation experience has given me expansion-based orthodontics. So I've had really good arch development. But this is where I think I'm playing now, more so in the last 5 years, because I have time to do it. I'm spending time, looking at gums, looking at contact points, looking at ridges, making sure that everything is where it needs to be. And again, you don't have to, but it's a lot of fun to be able to do that. So again, when we focus around the customer's needs are very, very important. So can we accomplish all this in less time with less discomfort? So how many of you guys have ever asked your patients how their journey was? Like, when did you feel pain? Okay, most of them feel pain at the end of treatment. They don't feel very much. They feel pain the first couple of days, just because their body has to wake up. Cytokines start kind of getting into the PDL, and there's always going to be an inflammatory response that's an initiated response. So we're going to have a little bit of discomfort that can last 1 to 2 days if the forces are low. But after that, their journey is pretty straightforward, because it's all resilient wires, right? Nine-tie wires until we get to the end. And then we start bending, and the patients hate us because it hurts, right? So can we get through that whole phase and not hurt them, and if we save their time? And then, without being selfish, can we also increase our profits so that we can pay for more technology? So when we make more money, we're able to then say, hey, you know what? That new laser that's going to do the gingival reductions in half the time, I can buy that laser because I have a little extra revenue and a little extra profit to pay for it. It doesn't mean that I'm some greedy person who wants to make more money. It just means that I can use those profits to drive innovation. So the bottom line is really important, because we have to pay for our technologies. So if we look at this destination as being something that gives us a beautiful smile, a good occlusion, awesome microaesthetics, it's patient-centered, less pain, less time, and makes us more money. That sounds like a golden ticket, right? Well, let's tell the story of that golden ticket. So what if we could achieve all of those things without having to change bracket position based off of malocclusions? We don't have to move around. We can start to dial in bracket positions pretty well. What if we don't have to bend arch wires for rotation axial tip corrections? What if we have to use steel ties and crank on the wire to try to get it to engage? What if we don't have to add wire bends or pre-adjusted wires? We don't have to put in all these 20-degree reverse curve, 2 to 2. Have you guys ever had those inventories where you have all these different measurements of the torque in order to get them through the anterior segment? I mean, it's a nightmare. What if we didn't have to use Warren springs, exceed treatment times, all of these things? So one of the messages that it was funny, Steve actually came up with this. He's like, isn't it kind of cool that we don't have to do all these things? And I'm like, wow, that's great. So I could come up here and say, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Or I could come up here and say, guess what you don't have to do, right? So I'm just taking it off your shelf. I'm not even saying, oh, you're bad for putting a Warren spring in. I'm just saying, hey, guess what if you don't have to? And a lot of you guys can't delegate. So if you're not delegating, wouldn't it be nice if you didn't have to steel tie, bend, add pre-adjusted wires, add Warren springs, all these things that take time? Wouldn't it be nice if you could just put a wire in and let the system do itself? So it's about demonstrating how innovations in PSL help us not to do things to improve clinical outcomes. So it's a fun way of looking at it. So we take a nice patient like this that has a beautiful macro, mini, and micro aesthetic. What we're going to do is we're going to show how the Ultimate system has all these attributes to get to that destination, but you still have to know the strategies to get there. Okay, so the journey is still very important, and you could easily show your before and after photos, and you could knock out the destination part of your presentations. Okay, so if you're lecturing anywhere, university, study club, a platform of 3,000 people, if you show before and afters, you're going to knock out this part of your presentation. But you will not convert, sell, or influence anyone unless you can clearly define the journey. Okay? I used to get super mad when I was, I'd spend all this money. I'd shut my clinics down. I'd get on a plane. Yeah, I mean, I'd have some fun, socially. We all do, right? And I'd go to dinner and have a good time. But when I was in the chair and I was watching the presenter teach me how to be better, and all they would do was show how good they were without teaching me how they got there, I would just get livid. I'm like, well, why aren't you telling me how you got from point A to point B? And they wouldn't. They're super frustrated. If you sign up for my course, I'll show you. I'm like, come on, man. Like, I want to see it. Like, give me one. So telling the journey and being very transparent is really, I think, one of the best ways to share information. So the journey is something we're going to talk about today. This is what Armco's done for us. They've straightened the road, right? So the journey from point A to point B, the shortest distance is always the most efficient and usually the best, okay? Unless you want to sightsee, because this is what we did for the last 100 years. We sightseed. We took big turns, and we'd put some braces on and things would be going right, and then they would kind of go wrong, and we'd reevaluate, and we'd kick the tooth the other direction, and then we'd kind of get it moving. Something else would happen. We'd throw on a warning spring. Something else would happen. We'd put like some reverse curves in. Something else would happen. We'd reposition. We'd steel tie. We'd lose control. We'd just debond, right? So this is how ortho has been taught for 100 years, and that's okay. However, in the United States, I don't have data worldwide. This is just through Gauge and through the AAO. In the United States, the national average treatment time, regardless of modality, but it's fixed appliances. It's not aligners. So fixed appliances, regardless of modality, of the people who entered into the study, and it was backed by Gauge, which you don't even have to. Engage is a software company that can look at your back-end practice management system and give you analytics. That's what it is. I don't know if they have that in other countries, but in the United States, they can just pop in and say, okay, your average treatment time is 27 months. You're like, no, it's not, but the data doesn't lie. So about 26 months, but this is what's crazy. An average of 22 appointments to get somebody through their orthodontic journey. The kicker is that this is completely acceptable, okay? It's widely accepted. Like, oh yeah, braces 2 years. I don't think if you told a mom, like, guess what? You're going to be here for 26 months, 22 separate times you're going to have to wait in my office. And most likely, if I'm straightening you 22 times, I don't care about your time. So you're probably going to wait for 5 or 10 minutes as well. So now you're going to spend 22 separate afternoons in my office. And you're going to do that for the next 2 years. And it's going to take you about an hour each time you came in. Do you think anyone would sign up for that? 22 wasted hours? And they would if that was the only thing that was there. But what if there's something down the road where they got this magic dust? They just go, pop. Magic dust fixes your teeth, no pain. How much would you pay for that? I mean, we don't have that guy. So Armco, get working. Magic dust, no pain. But no, I like extremes. Okay, so, but when you find technologies that can get you closer to the magic dust, like, be okay with it, be proud of it, right? So we were talking about when I lectured, the first time I ever got to do a clinical lecture, I got invited to speak on one of the main platforms at a Damon Forum. And at the time they were called Damon Forum, now they're the Armco Forum. But I was lecturing on like purpose and drive and community and culture because, back in 2015, like the Speakers Bureau was stacked with like legends. Like somebody like had to die for you to get a job, right? And I didn't mean that like figuratively. It was stacked. You could not get on the stage because it's a great job. It is. It's a great thing connecting with your peers, talking about the thing you love. And the people that were doing fairly well, they had a good audience, they had a good following. So it was very hard for a new person to come in and lecture on clinical orthodontics because one, you didn't have the credibility. I was too young. So guess what they did? I knew how to build a practice and create a culture and a team. So Armco tasked me for that for like years. And then one day they said, hey, do you want to do a clinical lecture on finishing? And I'm like, why? Like, I'm not your clinical guy. And they're like, yeah, we want you to. So I picked the one case that I could cherry pick. I made sure I saw her like every 4 to 5 weeks. I made sure it was perfect. And then I used that one case to dissect finishing. And it worked out well, okay? But this was the case. Tiffany was treated in 23 months. It doesn't matter how I treated her or what I did. The issue was that she was a mess. She had traumatic extractions of her lower first molars when she was like 8 years old. She felt that she didn't even have anesthetic, so she was traumatized. This girl has her MBA, is climbing the corporate ladder, but feels that she's being held back by her facial appearance. And now she's so scared that she doesn't really want to get anything fixed. So she ends up in my office somehow. It says, Dr. Bịthnell, it says that you don't take out teeth. I want you to fix my teeth, but I don't want any teeth taken out. Because we all know that the slam dunk treatment here is to take out upper first bicuspids, balance the tooth mass. Most likely she'd end up with a decent profile. At least this is the way I was trained, right? Because she already has lower bicuspids. And if you look at this, we all know that when you upright these lower molars, they're going to rowboat the lower teeth back. You're going to have a big overbite. She's got crowding in the upper. She's going to end up with a big overjet. So in my mind, I'm like, hey, did you ever think about maybe taking out 2 teeth at the top? And she's freaked out, told me the whole story. She's like, that's not a problem. You're not going to do that. I'm like, okay, well, let's use some ingenuity. So I used, at the time, I think it was DQ, I used some TADs and I got her here. So this was my aha moment. I belong on a stage because I kind of felt like I could show up. And I laid all the treatment out. I was using lasers and TADs and cool mechanics, and I was showing how good I was, okay? And that was probably the wrong message, but that's what I did, and it was great. But was I able to do this all the time? Or just for the one case that I cherry picked for the stage? I don't know the answer to that question. Because here's the answer. If this is where I'm going, okay, this is what happens. You start out okay, but then rotations creep in, angulations creep in, contacts break. You get vertical issues. Torque control becomes a problem. This is what her wires looked like the week before I took her braces off. There's like 40 bends in there. This was me trying to make it good for my peers. Would I work this hard if my peers weren't looking? I don't know. I probably know the answer to that too. Shameful, it is what it is. But it is, right? So I still got a beautiful result, but oh my goodness, the work, all right? So now I'm going to show you somebody else who started roughly the same time. I don't know, they must have knew each other or something, because they both came in, and look how long it took me to treat him. He lost all his hair. So he came in, and he was the same way. This guy's awesome. He's like, hey, Dr. Bịthnell. He's like, I've been to like 5 consults. I heard that you're like a magician. The Stamen system's great. You can do it non-surgically without extractions. And I'm like, oh, what? I'm like, you probably need a 3-piece jaw surgery. I'm like, you need some braces. I don't even know if I can get that tooth in. And he's like, oh, he's like telling me I was gonna be okay. He's like, no, you're good. Let's do this. And I go, okay, let's try it. I'm willing to try anything. I'm kind of a cowboy when it comes to stuff, but I go, if it ever goes south, we're stopping. So, here we are. So 29 months later, it's a nightmare. I'm struggling now. And I'm not proud of this. Luckily, I saw him a little while ago and his teeth didn't fall out yet. But, he's like pretty tipped out. But anyone who's ever treated a case like this realizes that when they come in, everything shuts down, right? Because look at his wires. There's 8 bends in the first order, 9 bends in the second order, and God only knows how many bends are in the third order. But I do know that this is the passive bend on the piece of the wire that's trying to get this tooth torqued. I've got a 50-degree bend in a 1925 steel wire engaging into a bracket. How is that even possible? That tooth should be flying into California from Chicago. But it didn't. I didn't. The result, though, is that it's just sweaty. And as you get better, you get more and more of these cases, and it feels like your afternoons are just plugged up with this stuff. We were talking last night. When's the last time any of you guys saw a class 1 with 2 millimeters of crowding? Come on. No, I see 5 millimeter open bite, 20 millimeters of crowding, and they want aligners for 6 months, right? That's the new mentality. I have to say no. Again, so here's what's cool is that this is what he finished after 37 months. Now, funny enough, I recently saw his daughter, so I'm like, oh my God, I saw his name on the schedule, and my heart was freaking out because I thought he was going to sue me or something. And he's like, I figured his teeth were a mess. But what's funny is this is what it looked like. This is almost 3 or 4 years later. Somehow he's still holding up. I do have a fixed retainer in there, and he's religious, but it's not bad. I don't see a lot of, breakdown with perio, so I'm feeling okay about that. So many of you guys saw me in Bali, right? And when I was in Bali, they asked me to give a presentation on DQ2 and TADS. Now, funny enough, I don't know if you guys knew this, but when I was in Bali giving my presentation on DQ2 and TADS, I wasn't treating with DQ2 anymore. I was already into Ultima, but I had thousands and thousands of DQ2 cases, so I had to rebuild that whole presentation to do it once. But what I showed was all these cases, and all these cases were really hard, but they all turned out beautiful. Every one of them. I was super proud to show every one of these cases. And I was so proud to be in Bali and share that information. And I forgot who I was with yesterday. They showed me the picture of me on stage. They go, it looks like you, but you look younger there. Your hair wasn't gray. 3 years does a lot when you're 50. But anyway, all these worked out well. So the big question is, why would Ormco invest time and effort to essentially cannibalize their own market? Right? And this is probably not the best business decision. I think it's because the philosophy of the company that we work with and people like Dr. Damon and the people who believe in Dr. Damon's passion believe if, just like Thomas Edison, if there is a better way to do it, find it. And that's the people I want to spend money with. So I'm up here presenting on behalf of Dr. Damon and Ormco, but I also buy all their stuff. And I have to pay for it, I do some consulting and I get some credits, but I spent like $600,000 US last year in Ormco products. Every year I buy them because I love them. I want to give my money to people who help me and are friends of mine. Could I buy things cheaper? Sometimes, yes, but I don't because I still like the quality, the service, the family, the support, and the innovation. Okay, so without that, these companies won't survive. And that's one of the things I try to talk about is support the companies that support us. Okay, so we got to do this for one quick minute. I like doing this when, and you guys, anything that I do, you can steal, use, borrow, whatever. We all do that, right? But one of the things you'll find is that residents, you can tell them anything and they believe you. Somebody practicing for 40 years, you can tell them anything true and they don't believe you. Somewhere in the middle, we got tainted, scared, and set up with our belief systems. So what I always say, I love this, it says the only thing that interferes with my learning is my education. We've been taught to not believe in certain things. So I always say, let's all go back to the first day of residency. We didn't know anything about moving teeth. Our mind was blank. Okay, so for the next 2 hours, let's try to think like that. Let's just be open to the discussion. And the reason why is because we've changed. This is my daughter, Marina. Some of you guys have met her. She's 7 now. We were in Paris doing an Ultima launch 3 years ago. And what do you do when you go to Paris? You go to the Eiffel Tower. She was not having it. It was hot that day. She couldn't smoke cigarettes. She couldn't have a gun up there. She couldn't do drugs. All the things that apparently a 5-year-old wants to do. But she immediately understood that this place sucks. She's like, I can't do anything because kids don't like the word no. It's not because they're defiant. It's because they're imaginally creative. No's are, they always say your kid's first bully is your parent. In other words, I'm my kid's first bully. I'm the one who tells them no, right? And I try really hard not to, but sometimes it's hell no. But, that's different. But this is her, and I said, look, just let Grandma and Grandpa go see the Eiffel Tower, and then we'll get gelato. This is her the same day, and I'm not a big social media person, so I don't sit around and have a GoPro on my head, tracking my kids' every smile. But I was fumbling with my phone. I got this picture, and it's on our wall. I love this picture. This is the picture that shows happiness through eyes. When people smile with their eyes, they're happy. It's not fake. Okay? So I was talking to Dr. Damon about this, and he was talking all about how hard it was to be an orthodontist back in the day. Pinching bands, grinding things on lathes. I think he had a metal shop in his basement, making stuff. He had to bend wires, had weird anchorage requirements, and because of that, he even showed that 44 different appointments. The timeline was crazy. So just look at this. This is the world we live in. We've got beautifully manufactured appliances. We've got amazing metallurgy with shapes that I don't even know how they make them. We've got great anchorage requirements. All this together saves time. So innovation is new capabilities emerging and having smart people with access to state-of-the-art technology. If you want your audience to be included in your presentation, The state-of-the-art technology is built by companies like Ormco. The smart people are all of you, okay? Every single person that adapts this technology will have something to offer each and every one of us as far as a pearl, a trick, a tip, or a modification of how we use it. It's almost like Wikipedia, right? Wikipedia used to be that everyone just dumped a bunch of information in, and that information fact-checked itself. Like, that's kind of cool. That's kind of what we do here. You know, we all kind of dump information in, and it becomes a best practices type of lecture. So this isn't, the stuff I'm presenting is not just what Mike Bịthnell does in Elmhurst. It's because we had hours and hours and hours and hours of collective calls of 20, 30 people on, tons of discussions, and trying to guide this rule book or this instruction manual in a way that is followed by science and engineering, but also clinical practice. So the stuff I'm going to show you today isn't just me, I'm just here presenting it. My bubbles again. So again, innovation. Things are limitless. So what we're going to do for the rest of this presentation until tea time is talk about 3 keys to unlocking peak performance. Okay? Don't worry. You guys, there's plenty of cases in the afternoon. And there's going to be 3 good cases here. But if all I do is show before and afters, all I'm going to do is show you how good of an orthodontist I am. That doesn't move anyone's opinion. Okay? It's an ego-driven presentation. Every good story has 3 parts to it. This is the fluff. Why do we have to work so hard? How innovative designs work? Here's the systems. But what every single story has to have is a problem, a solution, and essentially a map. That's what it's called. Problem, solution, and map. But I try to say strategies because it sounds fancier. Okay? But really, every movie is written with it. You got to have a problem. You have to have a solution. You have to have a villain. Every story has to have this. And we tell stories. If you come up here and all you do is talk about before and after, like people, they're gone. The attention span of the modern orthodontist is like a dog, like squirrels, right? We're all like this. We scroll and we get bored. So you have to tell stories because stories get people intrigued. They draw them in. You have to bring them into the story. If I'm the main character of the story, you're going to just go to the bathroom or eat or go on your phone. If you guys are the main character of the story, then you're invested. So what's the problem that everybody in this room probably has or has had? Let's talk about it. The way that traditional orthodontics has been, and this is for the last 100 years. So just remember that Angle developed the first edgewise system. It was 022 by 028. After he did the ribbon appliance, he kind of turned it to the side and then made the standard edgewise. Larry Andrews, all he did was just kind of say, hey, let's make it a little bit more pre-adjusted so we don't have to bend as much. It wasn't truly a straight wire appliance. The first true straight wire appliance is the Damon Ultima system. I firmly believe that. I can say that because it's the only one truly that you can actually get results with straight wire. Everything else you have to bend. So Larry Andrews tried to do a straight wire appliance, but it was just more pre-adjusted because there's something going on, and this is what it is. This is a works file, so let's compare to. Let's look at traditional designs and let's look at precise engineering. So these are the cool assets that you can get from Ormco. So they have a whole bunch of things, and you can figure out ways to cut them up to tell your story, right? So I got a bunch of movie files, and then I just kind of cut the movie files into other things and try to tell my own story. And you're going to find your own way to tell your story. But Ormco has a lot of assets. That's what they call them. Images, movie files, things like that you can use. My recommendation is when you get that movie file, try to find a way to make it your own. Don't just take the movie file that has like the marketing ploy from Ormco, because it just looks like you stole it from Ormco. There's really great ways. Take the movie, put it into a movie clip editor, and just cut it up a little bit. Just make it your own. That's what I did here. And they let you do that. They're fine. And they own this presentation anyway, so it doesn't matter. It's in your contracts. All right. So what you do is if you look at this, and you, like what Dwight says, you go into the slot. And this is a 1925 and a 022 by 028. In the first order, you got plus or minus 4. In the second order, you got plus or minus 5. And in the third, you got plus or minus 11. So that's crazy because that means in 2 adjacent teeth, if you go the wrong way, that's double. That means that 2 central incisors can have 8 degrees of play at best in the first order, 10 degrees at best in the second, and almost 22 at best in the third. Have any of you guys ever had really nice central incisors, and then you start C-chaining, and they start going like this? You're like, wow, they look better before I started. I hope they don't notice that. And you just chop off this part of the enamel so it looks like it's vertically the same. I mean, I've done that. I didn't mean to, but They were in like 30 months of treatment, and it took another 8 to get them straight. So you do the best you can. But the reason for that is that I was C chaining. And I was C chaining when there was play. In Newton's laws, every force has to have a negative and equal and opposite counterforce. Okay? My son plays ice hockey. That's where you put like little knives on your feet and you skate, for all you guys that live in 100-degree weather. It's a weird sport, but it's fun. Steve knows it well. He's Canadian. But he's now 13, which means at 13 you can start hitting. It's called checking. So he's 13 and I'm his dad. So out of nowhere, I'll walk by and I'll crash into him. And he goes flying. And I'm like, Newton's third law. I'm like, get lower. Give me back some reverse check. So now he doesn't even know when it's coming. Right when he sees me, he like bolts down and like he lowers the center of gravity and he pushes back. Well, this is what this is. So what happens is your teeth are going to dissipate the forces. Now, what happens here is this. When we have a wire bracket assembly that allows for clearance and tolerance issues and play just by design, which all of them do. So just remember, that bracket that I showed you was a DQ bracket. That could be an ASL bracket if you put a spring on it. It could be a twin bracket if you just rip the door off. The slot is the important part, okay? 022 by 028 with a rectangle that's smaller, okay? What ends up happening is you have to bend wire, and that's how we're all trained. Who were the best orthodontists 30 years ago? The best wire benders, right? Well, what did we have to do in our residency? We had to bend wire. And the ones that get bended the best usually had some of the best clinical outcomes. And the reason why is this. Again, my wires. You start out, next thing you know, you get a first order problem, then you get a second order problem, then you get a third order problem. As you get all these problems, these are the X's, and this is just like that road that I showed you in the beginning. Now, I still get a good outcome. So if you look at this case, it's kind of, I found a case just like it, so this is why I used it. It's got some posterior discrepancy issues. It's got a little bit of a crossbite, spacing lower, crowding upper, and I think I finished it quite well. I used DQ2 to do that. So it took me 23 months and 13 visits. I'm still crushing the visits, so now I'm still really good with my efficiency. My timing's not the best, but it's okay, because I accepted the fact that this was kind of a hard case to treat, and to get that type of outcome, this is what, in my hands, it took me. But with every X comes more time, more visits, more effort, more pain, more, not the outcome we want, right? Okay, so check mark on the problem. So what's the solution to the problem? Well, let's go discover it. Solution to that problem, and look, I built a comparison chart once of all the modern digital orthodontic platforms that are trying to provide a solution to that problem. And I didn't name them, but I have a picture of them. It's just not really fun. I don't like talking about other people's stuff, but you still have to know what other companies are claiming. Because when you're speaking, you are in a position where you're going to have a side conversation and say, well, how is that different than KLO? Or how is that different than Lightforce? How is that different than X, Y, or Z? So you still have to have a fundamental knowledge of what those particular systems do, not so you can denigrate them or talk bad about them. But what you do is you have to know their function and say, okay, this is what this does to solve that problem. This is what Ultima does to solve that problem. And from what I'm saying, this is a more pure way. That's an argument you'll always win. You can't say, don't say anything bad about any other products. Or at least I don't. I try not to. But if we look at Ultima, if I'm going to take that same analysis, I'm going to blow up the bracket, I'm going to stuff the wire in. This is a variable torque bracket with an 18 by 0275 wire in it. Now, if we turn it sideways, and then we go through the axial for a first order, there's a plus or minus 1 degree. There's 0 degrees in second order and 0 degrees in third order, which means this wire is fully coupled with the bracket in the direction that I want it to move. Now, that is quite amazing because if I eliminate all the play, this is truly by design and in theory, okay, so this is, again, if you don't show any clinical cases, this doesn't mean anything. It's garbage, okay? It looks pretty. There's a lot of pretty things that don't work. So in theory, this is going to eliminate all the play. Now we have to figure out a way to show how it works, okay? So if we have precise engineering, now I'm comparing this to twin, ASL, PSL. Theoretically, if I don't have to have bending, then I don't need all those X's and my timeline is shortened. So instead of having my ideal journey way or my common journey up here, my ideal journey is cut in half. So let's look at this. This was the case I just showed. I tried to get one that looked almost the same. And they look pretty good. They got midline discrepancies, anterior crossbite, posterior crossbite, some issues, right? So I was able to treat that. I actually like this finish a lot more for a bunch of reasons, okay? That was a Damon Ultima. That one was treated in 11 months and 8 visits. More importantly, there wasn't an archwire bend in there. Now, I'm not saying that all your cases are going to be 48% less time. No, I'm right at around 27. And I'm not saying that you're going to have 39% less visits. I'm somewhere around 27. However, in that case, apples to apples, I don't even care about this. The fact that I got from here to there with 0 archwire bending, 4-wire sequence, it was amazing. It's just, I mean, I remember when this one happened, I sent it to Dwight. I'm like literally, thank you. Like, I mean, it was just fun. So, sorry, I have to go back because it's important. Sorry. So again, how I started the lecture, or the presentation, I was saying, wouldn't it be nice if we could do more by doing less? So that's what this is. Innovative technology helps us to achieve more by doing less. Okay, so for anybody who isn't really into business but is in full clinical but can't delegate, wouldn't it be nice to get greater results without having to work as hard on each case? I mean, if you have to see 20 patients and you're just sweating by the time you're done, but if you're just kind of checking and making sure the system's working and you're swapping wires, you can see 30 patients and be fine because you're not doing all those labor-intensive things, okay? So that's the solution. Now, let's look at strategies. And I have about 20 minutes, and then we're gonna take a tea break. So strategies is the plan map. It's basically the way that we manage cases, okay? Now, the cool part about systems is that there's been tons of books written on systems. Atomic Habits is one of the greatest books you could ever read. It talks about systems. Orange with Martin said a good system shortens the road to the goal. So having systems doesn't mean you've sold out. It just means that you've tried to take 100 different things, find best practices, and create a system that will get you to your desired outcome with the most predictable pathway, okay, with the least amount of time. That's what systems do. That's why you go to Starbucks and they all pretty much are pretty good. So if you break down anything into smaller components, it also simplifies it. So when we look at something like a complex orthodontic treatment, there's a lot going on from start to finish, okay? But from start to finish, you can break it into, let's say, 3 different spots. What you do is you create predetermined progress points. Now, I'm going to urge that you guys capture the records of those progress points because it's going to help you to tell the story, okay? So records are going to be key for you guys as educators to tell stories. If I wasn't educating, I wouldn't need as many records. I wouldn't, but you need records because people will inherently not believe what you're telling them. It's that unbelievable sometimes. It breaks it up into smaller parts, allows for evaluation, and improves your predictability overall. So for Damon Ultima, we've kind of found this to be true. We've got 3 phases. The first phase is the round wire phase. The second phase is the full expression phase. And the third phase is the case completion phase. It's that simple. I mean, that is like so cool. It's the easiest way to break it down. So in the round wire phase, we know that we're going to take care of first order rotations and get some arch development uprighting. In the full expression phase, that's exactly what we're doing. We're expressing second and third order. So we're getting axial and we're getting torque. And then the case completion phase is exactly that. It's what do you need to do to get the case done? Do you need to close space? Do you need to modify arch form? Do you need to work on the bite with AP elastics? It's not that, it's really, really simple, okay? So let's say hello to Madison. Hello, Madison. All right, so Madison is a fun case that I chose just because it kind of gave me like some good feels for all 3 orders of tooth movement. She had a lot of crowding, a lot of rotations, didn't want extractions, and I didn't want to extract anyway. But let's go through this. So we're going to use Madison as our little model on phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. So just so you know, I take photos at the end of each phase. Okay, so at the end of phase 1, we take a set of photos. At the end of phase 2, we take a set of photos. At the end of phase 3, which is 1 week before debond, we take a set of photos. Okay. I also take photos the day of bonding. It's a really good thing to get into. So patient gets their braces on, full set of photos. Okay. Okay, let's go through this. And you've seen some of these. So let's go back. Sorry. And again, Dr. Damon is very truthful when he says, I want you all to have that presentation. a lot of these little slides will be in his presentation that you can take pieces from and then use to help explain your point. And that's what I did right here. I didn't build this, Dr. Damon did. And then I just used it to kind of help explain my phase one. So it's basically your round wire phase, and I'll explain why this is a round wire in just a second. First order correction, arch development, anterior space consolidation. Okay, so this is courtesy of Dr. Damon. I also still feel when you borrow something from somebody, give them credit for it. It's really small, just put it down there. Right? It actually makes you look better. Citing citations, if I pull something from an article, I'll give credit to the person on top. It just makes you, A, really respectful of the person who came up with it. B, it really makes you look very professionally scientific. And it just looks nice. So I cite bibliographies at the end and stuff like that too. So anyway, Dr. Damon had this cool image. So I just blew it up and I talk about how everything was built around center point, but this is an 014 NITI. The 014 goes in and bounces things around. He starts cellular biology, gets things moving, right? Wakes up the tongue. We all know what the initial wires do. And because it's passive and because there's a fourth wall and because we're not binding it with any rubber bands, the forces are as low as reasonably possible. If you want them even lower, go to an 013, okay? It doesn't matter. But there's gonna come a time where that wire doesn't have any more deflection. Even though the teeth aren't straight, the wire's gonna go through the braces, the wire's gonna be straight, the teeth won't be straight. That's your time to change. So then we go to 0 and 8, pick up the 7s, and now that 0 and 8 is a great wire because it sets up for the next wire, which is the third wire, which is the 14 by 0275. Now you heard me say that this is a round wire phase. You must think that I'm crazy because that's not a round wire, but it is, and let me explain why. This wire is engineered to have only 0.005 clearance between the base and the door, which means you got 1 degree of play in first order, which is going to get you the tooth where it needs. It's going to correct your rotation unless you put the bracket on the wrong spot. I mean, that's literally as simple as that. But how can I say that it's a round wire, and how can I shove this into phase one? Well, because watch, if we move this over, and we go over and we make a fun little round wire, this is an 0275 round circle. It looks just like Dr. Damon's 14 by 0275, okay? Now, if Dr. Damon could find a way to do it, he would have shoved an 0275 round wire into here. But geometrically, you can't because it's 022 tall. So what he did was just chop off the top and the bottom. Somehow, I don't know how they made it. You have to find that one out, but it's a proprietary way of doing it. But essentially, because he was using a 1425 in DQ2, and because a 14 by 0275 seems like a very logical and comfortable chunk, and also because the 14 by 0275 happens to have the same linear cross-sectional area of a jump from an 014 to an 018 to a 14 by 0275, it fit the bill. This could be a 13 by 0275 for all it matters. It doesn't matter. But the 14 just makes it nice. If I'm using DQ2 and then you give me all new wires and I've got like a 13 by 0275, 17 by 0275, I'm probably not buying into it because it's way too complicated. But you've got to give people what they feel and what they like. So it became a 14, which what happens, it goes right back in. So when I look at my initial and I go 013, 014, 018, I can end up getting all first order corrections in a very, very short period of time because I've got the tongue moving for us, okay? And we'll go through this case after lunch. But phase one, round wire phase, 014 copper non-tie, 013 if you've got a lot of crowding or rotations. The purpose is to activate the biological systems. The goal is to initiate tooth movement. Appointment intervals are anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks, okay? Just let it cook, but don't rush it, okay? It's very important to tell people that you're teaching, I know it seems cool to get to that last wire because that's the way we were trained, because we were trained to bend wire, but just take your time. Then go to your 018, then go to your 14 by 0275. Now the cool thing about the 14 by 0275, since it couples the first order rotation, we can now lightly chain the anterior segments on that wire and not worry about canines rotating, okay? So instead of having to wait now to close space to 1925, we can start closing space right away, which is pretty cool. So what I want to do is let's look at a few cases because I got 10 minutes left and I've got to cruise through this. I'm going to look at 3 cases, a class 1, a class 2, and a class 3. And we're going to show how they treat it up to phase 1. Phase 1 to me is the most important phase because it's your setup and it's your bracket positioning. And it's just, once you get out of phase 1, you can see the pathway to completion if the patient's helping you. So we're going to spend a little bit longer on phase 1, and then phase 2 and phase 3 is pretty fast. So here's Jessica. Jessica was that girl that we talked about. She's got some constriction, a little bit of anterior crossbite. I mean, again, not really so worried about her problem list. This is what it looks like the day we put the braces on. Some of these cases, I don't use any neutral torque anymore, but some of these cases still have it until I swap them all out. This is 5 months after, so she went 0 and 4, 0 and 8, 14 by 0275. We C-chain the bottom, ran some class 2 elastics, C-chain under the wire because she still had some space. And look how nice this looks after 5 months. And it makes sense because she had crowding on the upper, spacing on the lower. So this little crossbite's just taking up a tooth discrepancy, right? It's not magic. It's good first order control and really good bracket positioning. So you can see how, but look, that wire still has, remember the photos are taken at the end of the appointment, at the end of the phase. So that wire is an 18 by 0275, and then they leave, they take the photo. So that wire's got some activation in it. But at the end of phase 1, transverse is popped out nice, it's symmetrical, teeth are looking good. I'm kind of almost at the end here, and I can see the case finishing. And this is what you'll find. Most of your cases coming out of phase 1 will look like they're almost done. Because a 14 by 0275 has more control three-dimensionally than a 1925 did in DQ2. And I'll repeat that again. A 14 by 0275 wire has more control with a variable torque bracket in the anterior than the 1925 did in DQ2. So by the time I'm done with phase 1, I'm well past where I was bending wire at the end of treatment in Q2. But that's why they look so good, okay? Here's, it's always good to try to give them a timeline. So 0 and 4, 0 and 8, 14, 0275, started some rubber bands, 5 months. So that looks good. 9 minutes. All right, let's look at this young lady. This young lady had a pretty severe class 2. We thought she was gonna need a functional appliance, but she didn't. There's the spoiler. So she was class 2, a lot of overjet. She's actually functioning forward in this picture. Her x-ray is pretty significant class 2. So her plan was to create arch development, wear some light elastics, see if we can get things moving, and if she needed a functional appliance, we would put it in at month 6, which I use a Herbst just because it works for me. But what happened with her is we put her braces on, and then about 8 months later, she was looking pretty good. Now, she still had a CRCO slide here. So I'm not pretending that I've got her fully class 1 and great, but her arches are coordinated. Her alignment's nice. Her upper teeth tip back. She's got essentially good overjet and overbite when she's positioning forward, which she's kind of doing here. But she's got about a 3 millimeter slide. So I'm just like, okay, keep wearing rubber bands. We'll get there. But if you look at just what the system did, it did exactly what I wanted to do. Now, one of the things I want you to see is the bracket position doesn't look any different than the last case because the brackets are put where they're designed to be placed. At FA on the central, which is 5.5, 5 in lateral, and 5 in the canine. Posterior brackets are for function, so those are all placed the same spot, which we'll do a little bit in the afternoon. I have a little bracket positioning kind of presentation thing because you'll have to create one of those as well as how to put these things on. You see that it's looking great, lower's looking nice. And really in 8 short months, now I've had the conversation with mom at 6 that we didn't need the Herbst. Keep wearing your rubber bands, keep your teeth clean, and we'll get there. Here it is, 0 and 4, 0 and 8, 14, 0275. I left it in longer because when she came back for her first visit, I still wasn't 100% sure she didn't need a functional appliance. So I just let it sit for a couple more visits. I didn't have to do anything. I just said, just an elastic check. Didn't even have to take the wire out. Let's look at a fade. Let's look at class 3, okay? So this young lady comes in and she's class 3. She's got anterior crossbite, posterior crossbite, functional shift both ways. On her Ceph analysis, she has a mild class 3. Nothing that I really want to deal with surgery. So I want to see if I can get out of this with just, creating good smile arc, putting brackets on great, and treating this case properly. And I can tell you, one of the biggest gifts I've been given for my class 3 patients is the Ultimate system. And you'll see why. I've never, ever before had lower torque control, and I've never had upper torque control. So when you've got a class 3 that already has compensation, and then you run class 3 mechanics, it makes your compensation even worse. So almost all of my class 3s that I treated with camouflage, they fit together, but they didn't look very good. They had that kind of proclined upper and retroclined lower. The coolest thing about Ultima is that because we have an active torque couple and then a protective torque couple, you get your lowers at -1, you get your uppers at +7, and then they just work to get the overbite perfect. It's awesome. These look so good. You'll see this here. So we'll go through some torque selections after tea break. But I basically, most class 3s I'll use retro on the upper and pro on the lower. The reason that I used retro on the lower is because this tooth was really kicked out and I knew I had to roll it in. So because I was going to constrict the lower arch a little bit, I thought that the lower teeth might procline and I didn't want that to happen. I probably, in hindsight, would have probably used procline on him, but that's what I was thinking. So here she is at phase 1. Now I know she's almost done because now I've got the arch, everything's looking good, all the cross bites are corrected, I've got space in the bottom, midline's off, and I've got space over here. So we all know that once we close up space and hold anchorage, this case is going to drop in. So I'm like so happy in 7 months that she's there because now I'm like, I'm going to finish this case really fast. And we'll see how that plays out in the next 4 minutes. Okay, so that is her, and you can see 0-4, 0-8. Why did I go to 14.025 up here and stay on 0-8? Because when she came in, I didn't want to put the 14.025 through that 6 into that 7 because the 6 was still kicked out. So just let the round wire do its thing. Otherwise, I'm going to roll the 7 into crossbite. So sometimes you have to, make that evaluation. And then again, I do like waiting to 14.025 for elastics, except for crossbite cases. So posterior crossbite, anterior crossbite, I want to get that functional problem fixed, and then I'll worry about the angulation. So in class 3s, I usually try to start some class 3 elastics just to get that crossbite resolved. But not for class 2s. Class 2s, I wait until I have at least 14.275 on now. All right, so key takeaways for phase 1, don't rush the round wire phase. It does not matter how long you stay in the round wire phase because phase 2 and phase 3 happen so quickly, okay? You'll find out in the next minute or two that phase 2 lasts 12 weeks, that's it. And phase 3 is about that long too if everything's dialed in nicely. Extend the 0-8s to the 7s, don't skip that wire. And then with the 14.275, you can begin to consolidate anterior space. Upper and lower 3 to 3. Don't change 6 to 6. If you change 6 to 6, what you're going to do is you're going to close space and you're going to lose torque because the 14.275 controls no torque, okay? There's like 20 degrees of play in that wire in the third order, like 18. So just don't C-chain 6 to 6 and we should be C-chain 3 to 3. Now, if we C-chain 3 to 3, why don't we lose torque? Well, it's because we're consolidating anterior spaces. We're not trying to close the alpha beta space. Okay. Phase 2, which is basically our full expression phase. Essentially, we take out our 14.275, we put our 18.0275 by in. We use the Ultima hooks, so we slide the Ultima hooks up against the 3s, and then we just let it cook for 6 weeks. Have them back 6 weeks later, look for any repositioning, swap the brackets, put the same wire back in, and let it go for another 6 weeks. So phase 2, hands down across the board, lasts 12 weeks. And why? Because you start here, and all you do is you go to here. Now we're engaging our point. So our second order is kicked in, our third order is kicked in, and we're fully expressing the system. Now, at the end of 12 weeks, will third order be fully corrected? No, because torque takes time, but it's on its way. Usually axial will be done. So the cool part is by the end of phase 2, first order is done, second order is done, third order is on its way, right? And as long as you have the right bracket in the right direction. So if I have a procline bracket, if I have a procline tooth and I've got a retrocline bracket on it, and when they come back for repo, it's still a little bit procline, that's okay, just let it cook. The bracket's on the right spot. But if I have a procline lateral and I have a procline bracket on it, you could wait 10,000 years, it's never gonna do anything. That's the bracket you have to take off, put a retro on, and then let the wire upright that tooth. Okay, so for her, and this is what you'll see, your phase 1 to phase 2, they just look better, okay? Your patients are going to wonder why they have the braces still on at the end of phase 1. They're like, I have to fix things. So phase 2, now her arch is more level. We actually have 3 months of torque expression. I've repositioned a bracket. You can see that my bracket was up too high on this one. So I repositioned it. Now the teeth are nice and level. It just allows you to make it look nicer. Give you guys, give you a couple minutes. I'll finish this up. Okay, so now let's take a look at the same 3 cases treated to phase 2, okay? Now, rotations are maintained. Final tooth anterior tooth position should be set because you've repoed. Second order tip should be corrected. Third order is being expressed. And arch leveling and AP are continuing. So if we go ahead and we look at this case, Jessica was almost already done. So it's not like I had to do a whole lot, but I did have to maybe reposition a bracket. So from 5 months to 8 months, I mean, now you just see that that wire that had activation in it doesn't have activation. So let me go backwards one. So you can see how this wire has activation. And all it was expressing smile arc because that tooth was up. So that wire had to kind of bring the teeth down. You can see it in her smile now. She has more smile arc. Everything looks good. She doesn't have smile arc because I buried the brackets in the gums. She has smile arc because it's set where it needs to, and her occlusal plane is 7 degrees. So that's why it's set like that. So again, phase 2, simple, 3 months. And you'll see this. On your timelines, all your phase 2s will look like this with repo in the middle. Same wire, I don't have to go backwards. And people ask, well, how do you not have to go backwards? It's because if I'm in phase 1 and I see a grossly malpositioned bracket, I fix it right away. I don't wait till some magic time to fix my problems. If I see a problem, I fix it. This is more fine-tuned. Let's go ahead and look at Gabriella. Gabriella, now this is phase 1, 8 months, 3 months later, 11. Now, what are we looking at here? She's much more level because my 180275 is leveling that arch. She's wearing her class 2s more, so my AP shift is less. And now I'm starting to close space into phase 3. Again, just looks better. And if we look, I know it's going to start getting boring, but yeah, this looks exactly the same by design. That's the strategy. Again, same concepts. Rotation, final tooth position, second order, third order is being expressed. Let's go ahead and look at the one that I said I was almost done with, right? This is the class 3, Mila. So I know what's going to happen here, right? She's got space, and we're going to start to work on that. So this is 3 months later. We've closed that space, settled the occlusion. Now, we still have some work to do because our midlines aren't set. She still needs to wear some rubber bands, and you can't get smile arc until you have positive overjet. So her upper teeth were still banging on her lowers. So until I get a positive overjet, then that wire will allow those front teeth to come down. So I haven't gotten that yet. You can see that her smile arc hasn't been achieved because she just cleared her front teeth. But I'm okay with that because I'll do that in phase 3. So again, same thing. Okay? Hang in there, guys. You guys are going to get snacks and sugar in a couple minutes. Okay, takeaways for phase 2. Give the 18/0275 12 weeks to express tip and torque. Okay. Halfway in there, reposition if the tooth is not in the right spot and reselect if it's in the wrong torque, right? So if you've got a procline tooth and you've got a procline bracket on it, put a retro on it. It's not the end of the world. Take it off, put a new one on, put the wire back in, okay? And lastly, at the end of phase 2, look again for opportunities to reposition. It's a big one, okay? This is one that I have to continue to remind myself, is that we have a repositioning appointment, but it doesn't mean when they come back 12 weeks later, we look again. If something is not perfectly aligned in the anterior, it's never going to get aligned unless we bend the wire. So that's your second time. If they come back after 12 weeks and the centrals are still a little off, reposition again. Just stay in the 18/0275 9 time, moving to phase 3. So what is phase 3? Phase 3 is just occlusion and finishing. Typically, we will either stay in a 18/0275 9 tie. More commonly, we go to an 18/0275 steel over a 16/0275 steel. And then every now and then you can go to an overdrive wire in the upper if you need it, which we'll talk about later. So really, it doesn't change. It's the greatest thing about Ultima. It doesn't overexpress. You can have pro, retro, pro, retro, pro, retro. As long as you stay in 18/0275, it stops at the desired value or target value, which is what Larry Andrews dictated as the ideal tooth position for biohealth for a long time, right? He looks at the actual tooth positions to prevent recession, effractions, tooth wear, and long-term gingival health, right? So that's all because of how the tooth is positioned, and that's what the target prescription is. So we've got all these little contact points just doing the thing, hence full expression. So she's going to go from here to there. Now, why does this look better? Well, in her case, I knew that I needed a little kick, so I put an overdrive wire in the upper because she was still proclined in the upper. So instead of letting the 18/0275 work just for a little longer, I just wanted to see what I could do. So I put a 20/0275 in the upper right of the teeth, and then set up for debug. And then a week later, took the braces off, and everything looks good. So when we look at phase 3, it's your case completion wires. And the options are these. Stay in NiTi, go to steel, or choose your own adventure. Okay? Just remember, for every 1,000th you go up, you get 3 degrees of express torque in the direction that your bracket is going. So that can be good and bad. If you've got retro on the upper 2 to 2 and pro on your 3s, and you decide to shove a wire in because one lateral isn't expressing torque, you're going to now overexpress torque on a couple other teeth, and then somebody's going to tell you that the Ultima system doesn't work. It just works really well. So let's look at all three of these cases again, and you can see the finishes, and then we'll grab some tea. So again, Jessica, she was almost already done, but I still wanted to finish her treatment, so I put in an 18 by 0275 steel over a 16 by 0275 steel. Why do I like 16 by 0275 steel on the lower? It gives me just a little bit of vertical freedom, a little bit of play. I've already expressed the torque. I don't mind dropping back down and letting things settle in a little bit. But remember, they're neutral torque in the back, so if I got down to a 16, that gives me another 6 thousandths of a room vertically in the bicuspids. Just lets it dance a little bit more. But I don't like losing that in the upper, so I'll stay at an 18 by 0275 in the upper. So her phase 3 looks good. Again, here's what we did. And then 3 months, then we can take braces off. Everything looks good. So again, when the braces come off a week later, our images are taken the day after braces come off. They come back in for their final records. So she looks great. Good smile arc. Everything looks nice. Total treatment time 11 months. Super happy with how this looks. Now this is the thing. You'll start to see these dialed in aesthetics, these dialed in functional occlusions. It becomes very, very, very consistently normal. And this is what you'll be showing your audiences almost to the point where it's boring. Because you see how systematically the system fully expresses the proper values, and with your guidance and your strategies, you can lay out a very simple and clean pathway. Like, who doesn't want that, right? And then when you show, I'll show you guys something later. When you show a class 2 or a class 3, or what we're going to show in the afternoon is cases that have complexity with tats, what you'll see is the exact same pathway, because you rely on the braces to straighten the teeth, and then you rely on you as the orthodontist to fix the other underlying problem. So let's say it's a vertical problem. You'll use TADS to fix that, and you'll use Ultima to straighten the teeth. Collectively together, you get in a beautiful position. So 18 months, this is phase 3. She goes from, I left her in a little bit longer just because I wanted her to wear class 2 elastics. But unlike Q2, if I had rubber bands and I had a 1925 over a 1625, she would have problems, and I'd be detailing the wires. Now, right what I see at the end of here stays all the way to here. Those anterior teeth don't move. They're just locked in, but they're also passive, because as long as they're straight, there's no protective couples engaging. But let's say some force acts to rotate the tooth. The protective couple kicks in and prevents it. Let's say a class 2 elastic wants the upper tooth to tip back. The wire protective couple in that third order protects it. So it's just really cool that you get these active couples to position the tooth and a protective couple to hold it. So you have to think of it. Every movement is a couple. First, second, third order. Rotation, axial, and torque. For some reason, you only talk about torque, but it's all three. So there she is, and she's done. Looks great. And the last one that we're going to show you is that class 3. Oh, I got to go through these, but you can see just how nicely treated this was. The coolest thing about her when you measure is that her front teeth was cool, was as they tip back, they stopped exactly where they needed to. The lowers, as they move forward, stopped exactly where they needed to. So when I measure these, and I'll do this really funny thing at the very end of the day, where I look at all of the post-treatment x-rays of every case that I show you, and they almost all look identical. Like, it's crazy. Because usually I can look at post-treatment records and kind of guess where they started. They all have some look, but these don't. They just all start to really dial in and look great. Okay, again, this is what it looked like. Stayed a little longer to make sure that that CRCO shift was gone, and it was fine. I'll give you guys access to this stuff. It's just our education site has all these cases written up. So if you guys want to download them, look at them, use them, rewrite some stuff, or use the format for your own, go ahead. It doesn't matter to me. It's just the AVO write-up format that I made. All right, so Mila, 11 months, 14. I settled this side, right, just in time, and her smile arc settled, right? Her teeth erupted because the wire had a third order torsion in it. So those front teeth came down in the last 4 months. I used a little bit of overdrive wire for a little bit, but then saw that it was too much, so I took it out. Again, I think that staying in the 180275 realm keeps you protected. Use overdrive wires when you know exactly what they're going to do. When you know exactly why you're putting it in, you've made it. If you're just shoving it in because it's a bigger wire, don't put it in. Like, weird things will happen. It looks like a totally different kid. And she got a nose piercing. That's awesome. When you can do this stuff collectively, and again, I show this because I want to show class 1, class 2, and class 3. What we're going to do now is, let me finish this, I'll show this, and then we're going to take a break in a second. This afternoon, what we're going to do is we're going to finish up with, I'm going to talk a little bit more about, we're going to go through some cases, we're going to go through torque and bracket positioning, and then we're going to talk about challenging cases and how we use the Damon Ultima system to get the teeth where they belong, and then things like TADS or other treatments to get the other skeletal problems corrected. Because look, when you can trust the technology of the system, like it's so much more fun to treat complex problems. Again, so sorry. So takeaways for phase 3. Finishing is not detailing anymore. Okay? It's so much more fun because you get to be an artist now. You get to contour enamel, contour soft tissue, change contact points, open up embrasures, make adult teeth look youthful if they want you to. You don't have to. I don't subscribe to the camp that I have to cut everyone's gums or I have to enamelplasty everyone's tooth. That's not my market. They don't want ortho veneers. That's this new term, right? My market is they have the ability, hey, would you like me to change this to make this tooth look a little better? Well, what does that entail? I just polish the contact point a little bit. I can get rid of that little black triangle and I can make it look a little bit more youthful. Yeah, sure, go ahead. So I live in a very conservative market in the Midwest. Nobody wants to look like a Hollywood smile, but nobody really doesn't want me to make it look better. So you won't see that level of stamping out these amazing finishes on everybody, but I still think their finishes are perfect for them because they don't want me to do all those things. I love seeing teeth with enamel contours on the facial surfaces. It makes them look youthful. If I started just buzzing all that down, yeah, the photos look cool, but their teeth look kind of, well, I just don't particularly enjoy it. Again, choose the final wear step that's indicative of the objectives. If you have space between the alpha and beta section, go to steel. Just don't bend it, okay? Just use it as a torsional structure of rigidity to get those two segments together. Strategies are done, and that's cool. So problem, solution, map, okay? We're gonna end here. You guys go and get some tea or coffee or sugar or whatever they bought for us, and then we'll be back in like 15 minutes, okay? And then I will finish it up with quite a few cases, a pretty good discussion on torque and variable torque selection, because that's going to be your biggest challenge in teaching this material. It's pretty easy to teach phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It's pretty easy to teach bracket positioning because they all go in the right spot. And I think it's pretty easy in my mind to select the torque, but that's going to be your biggest challenge when you have to explain it. So we'll save that for after. All right, thanks guys. Okay. Food time.
Torsion structure. That's good. I haven't heard that. Jesus, that's good. Torsion. Welcome. You know what's funny? Because I was watching pretend I was a smart screen, and that one you're touching the fire. And then what did you go? You
And it goes down. Yeah, you saw that? That worked, right? Like, we're going to go up now. That's one of my favorite animations. It was an accident. Yeah. Like, when I built that, I was like, whoa, that looks cool. Like, it was a total accident how it happened.
Smart screen.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
You haven't built it, you know it's coming.
Yeah, you know what's coming. Yeah, you build this enough, you kind of know how it's
Sign my name.
Could I bother you to take a picture of that one?
Okay, no doctor. No, thank you. Thank you.
You want the one that has all the info, or this initial one where on top? Like,
Hi, my name is Yunji.
Hi, Chase. Nice to meet you. Sure.
oh, this.
I
So
appreciate
there's
that.
this one, and then there's.
How do you just
And then I'll
that
take
angle?
this picture.
That's a great question. Go over here. I'll show you.
Oh,
You know the funniest thing about
Yeah,
it?
take this one too, because this I just made. That was a part. I really like this one. The sun.
Oh,
And I
Like,
forgot.
I think it was
Did you ask to use it?
because like that was
That's
a tough thing.
that's very funny. So
The original DQ was like round
we
wire,
didn't
high
really-
text,
we didn't
high tech
really
edgewise, and then major
all that he
mechanics. That's how they
decided
taught
on was
So
Far side.
when they first
This
started
was gonna
teaching
be
this,
the
they tried to
DQ
lump the 14 by 275
and
and
then
the 18 by 275 cam, and it
the-
never made sense to me.
the
I'm like, I'm not doing anything with this.
basic
All I'm doing is finishing
is
first order, which I started with round. And then I started understanding what I did with the 0275. I called him, I'm like,
Keep shifting.
I go, can I just call this around wire? He's like, that's
Until we
exactly what
did
it is. He goes, I just
And
didn't make
and
it
that's why
bigger.
this
He's like,
angle,
because it would start to
it's
engage
really
it. Dwight didn't want to wire.
doesn't
Like,
really-
some people go, I want to go from
Because if we would have
they wish there was this
if he would've
magical
chosen,
metal
you know,
version.
16
You can just shove an 18 by
as the
0275
final wire.
and just, but what happens is you don't want that because if you got X, Y, and Z working against each other, the two just doesn't go the right way. You want to solve for X, then solve for Y, then solve for Z in that order.
Until it hits.
Yeah, they do, and they bind. And when you're binding, then you have friction. So you solve the first, let it get past it. Solve the second, let it get past it. You solve the third, and most of the cool part is the way the doctor designed it. Now, thinking about this, I have to incorporate this. Because he's passive in the posterior, and he's got a variable in the anterior. As your controller is working the anterior, you're still passive in the posterior, so you can close space in the alpha beta segment. Because it slides through the posterior segments. That was one of the reasons why they had a problem when they tried to make a second, upper second molar, they tried to put negative 27 torque on it. The problem is that the buckle root hit the buckle plate and it never expressed. So what happened was
probably because you
the
weren't
bracket would still turn, so you come through the 6, and then you would have to twist the wire. And what happened is you couldn't close space because it was jammed.
Your satellite
Right?
mechanics.
So then they had to go back to 10. And that's why we moved the bracket lower.
So that's when I say depends which way the wind's blowing.
We enjoy
If all of the teeth were in perfect position, you could go high, low, high, low, high, low, and it wouldn't bend. Or you could do them the opposite, low, high, low, high, low, high. It wouldn't matter. But if you felt like the wind like blowing this way or the other, build the backstop to hold them back.
Để viên giáo sư khác chụp hình được không?
Counter.